For as long as I can remember, I've had a complicated relationship with writing. I've always loved it, but for years, I kept it at arm's length. Writing for me was something that lived in the back of my mind as a hobby or something to do when I felt inspired. But for some reason, I never thought of it as a tool for reflection. I always saw journaling as something extra, something that people did to organize their thoughts or get their feelings out. But I didn't feel like I needed that. I was fine. At least, that's what I thought. But at 24, I realize now that the moment I started writing in my journal was the moment I started discovering things about myself that I had ignored for years. The truth is, I didn't start journaling because I was looking for deep answers. I didn't start writing because I felt lost or confused. I started journaling because I was stressed, and I thought it might help me unload a bit. An easy way to vent about my day, my week, or my endless to-do list. I thought journaling would be a casual thing, like a 5-minute activity at the end of my day to clear my head. What I didn't expect was how much my journal would teach me. I didn't start with any grand expectations. I was just tired of feeling overwhelmed. My job had become all-consuming, and I felt like I was losing myself in the process. I had no time for the things that used to make me happy. I wasn't painting anymore. I wasn't reading like I used to. And worst of all, I wasn't taking care of myself. I was always running from one thing to the next, and I had no idea where I was going. I remember the first night I opened my journal, feeling silly for even attempting to write something down. I sat there for a few minutes staring at the blank page, unsure of what to write. Eventually, I scribbled down the first thing that came to mind. Today was stressful. And that's how it all started. At first, I didn't write much. It was just a few lines about how tired I was, how busy I felt, how I couldn't remember the last time I took a deep breath and just relaxed. But after a few days, I started to notice something strange. The more I wrote, the more I began to feel. I wasn't just unloading a to-do list. I was unlocking emotions that had been buried beneath the surface for a long time. One night, I started writing about an argument I had with a friend. It wasn't a big fight, but it had bothered me more than I wanted to admit. I wrote down how I felt about the situation, about what she had said, about what I didn't say, and about how I wished I had handled things differently. As I wrote, I realized something I hadn't noticed before. I was always afraid of conflict. I didn't like confrontation, and I would often keep my feelings inside, hoping they would go away, but they never did. They built up over time, and eventually they would come out in some unexpected way, usually in a moment when I felt overwhelmed or exhausted. That was the first thing my journal showed me, that I was carrying around all this emotional baggage and I wasn't giving myself the space to deal with it. I had been so focused on my job and responsibilities that I had ignored the quiet ways in which my emotions were eating away at me. I just got promoted at work today. Just got promoted at work today. 5 proud. You can do this. If your accent is broken, you will notice promoted for when you prefer to let the magic of blank. Thanks for playing. Have a good day. At first, it was small things. As I wrote more, I realized how often I was pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I kept thinking that if I just kept going, if I just kept pushing forward, everything would eventually fall into place. But what I was learning was that I was ignoring the little things that could make me feel better, like taking time for myself, setting boundaries, and most importantly, being honest with myself about what I needed. The more I wrote, the more I realized that my feelings weren't something to be ignored. They were signs that I needed to slow down, that I needed to take care of my mental health, that I needed to stop being so hard on myself. And my journal became a way for me to process all of it. There were moments when I wrote about my family, my friends, my personal goals, and I realized that I had been taking so much for granted. I had been so focused on work, on productivity, on the next thing, that I hadn't stopped to appreciate what I already had. I hadn't realized how much I had been missing out on because I was always in a rush. Eigel. But the most surprising thing my journal told me was that I wasn't being as honest with myself as I thought I was. I would write down all the things I needed to change about my life, all the goals I had, but deep down, I was afraid of failing. I realized I was keeping myself busy with work and projects to avoid confronting the bigger fears that were holding me back. One night, I wrote about my biggest fear, that I wasn't living the life I was meant to live. I was afraid of wasting time, of not being successful, and of never finding a balance between work and happiness. It was the first time I'd ever admitted it to myself. That's when I understood something important. I had been so caught up in being busy, in trying to get everything right, that I wasn't allowing myself to be real. I wasn't giving myself permission to feel lost, to feel uncertain, or to just be. Writing in my journal helped me realize that I didn't need to have it all figured out. I just needed to be honest with myself about where I was and allow myself the time to grow into the person I wanted to be. I think the most valuable lesson I learned through journaling was the importance of reflection. Every time I put my pen to paper, I would find a deeper understanding of myself. And with that understanding came clarity. I was able to see the patterns in my thoughts, in my habits, and in the way I reacted to life. I started recognizing the things that brought me peace and the things that drained me. I began to see how I was letting fear dictate my decisions and how often I was avoiding the things that scared me the most. I also learned how important it is to give myself grace. For years, I held myself to impossible standards. I was so hard on myself for not achieving every goal, for not getting everything right. But through journaling, I realized that no one has everything figured out, and that it's okay to take things one step at a time. Now, I still journal, but it's not just a way to vent or unload anymore. It's a tool for growth, for reflection, and for understanding myself better. It's how I check in with myself, remind myself of what matters, and acknowledge how far I've come. My journal has become a mirror, showing me things about myself that I never would have seen without it. The unexpected gift of journaling wasn't just about writing down my thoughts. It was about discovering who I was underneath the surface, the parts of myself I had ignored, the things I was too afraid to face, and the lessons I needed to learn. Looking back, I realized that journaling has taught me more than I ever expected. It's taught me to be honest with myself, to stop pretending everything is fine when it's not, and to give myself the space to be vulnerable. It's taught me that I'm allowed to feel uncertain, and that sometimes the most important step forward is simply being willing to face my own truths.